The process of cellular respiration. How do your cells gain energy from the food you eat? The first stage of gaining energy is to process the glucose. This is glycolysis. During glycolysis, one molecule of glucose, a 6 carbon compound, is transformed into 2 molecules of pyruvic acid, a 3 carbon compound. Glycolysis is the first stage of 3 of cellular respiration. During glycolysis, glucose is broken down into 2 molecules of the 3 carbon molecule pyruvic acid. Pyruvic acid is a reactant in the Krebs cycle, the second stage. During glycolysis, ATP and NADH are produced as part of the process. In this case, 2 ATPs are used, ADP is a result, but then second portion of this, 4 ADP are used to produce 4 ATP, net gain of 2 ATP. Here, 2 NAD plus are converted into NADH, a more powerful, higher form. That's sent on to the electron transport chain we'll talk about. The 2 pyruvic acids are sent to the Krebs cycle, the next cycle out of 3. This ATP production, the cells deposit 2 ATP molecules into its account to get glycolysis going. So this is the beginning of the glycolysis. To trigger it. And then the pyruvic acid is formed. Glycolysis produces 4 ATP molecules, giving the cell a net gain of 2 ATP molecules for each molecule of glucose that enters glycolysis. Glucose enters the glycolysis, and there's a net gain of 2 ATP. 2 loss, but then 4 gain. NADH production. During glycolysis, the electron carrier NAD plus, nicotinamide anidine dinucleotide, accepts a pair of high energy electrons and becomes NADH. NAD plus becomes NADH. The NADH carries high energy electrons to the electron transport chain, where they can be used to produce ATP. 2 NADH molecules are produced for every molecule of glucose that enters glycolysis. So 1 glucose, 2 NADH, net 2 ATP in glycolysis. Glycolysis produces ATP very fast, which is an advantage when the energy demand of the cell suddenly increases. Glycolysis does not require oxygen, so it can quickly supply energy to cells when oxygen is unavailable. What happens during the Krebs cycle, the second cycle of 3 of cellular respiration? During the Krebs cycle, the second stage of cellular respiration, pyruvic acid produced in glycolysis is broken down into carbon dioxide in a series of energy extracting reactions. The Krebs cycle is also known as the citric acid cycle because citric acid is the first compound formed in this series of reactions. So it's a complex series of reactions we'll walk through. The net result is 2 ATP and carbon dioxide. Pyruvic acid from glycolysis enters the matrix, the innermost compartment of the mitochondria. So the pyruvic acid goes from the cytoplasm on into the mitochondria and passes into the matrix of the mitochondria, the inner realm. Once pyruvic acid is in the mitochondrial matrix, NAD plus accepts 2 high energy electrons to form NADH. 1 molecule of carbon dioxide is also produced. NAD plus converts to NADH, and a molecule of carbon dioxide is formed. The remaining 2 carbon atoms react to form acetyl-CoA. Acetyl-CoA combines with a 4-carbon molecule to produce citric acid. This is the 4-carbon molecule, and it produces citric acid. Citric acid is broken down into a 5-carbon compound and then a 4-carbon compound. The 2 molecules of carbon dioxide are released. The 4-carbon compound can then start the cycle again by combining with acetyl-CoA. So this 4-carbon compound runs around the circle again. We'll describe that. So citric acid, and then carbon dioxide breaks off, and then NAD plus converts to NADH, and then a higher form goes to the electron transport chain, along with pulling off another carbon dioxide. Energy released by the breaking and rearranging of carbon bonds is captured in the form of ATP, NADH, and FADH2. The 4-carbon ADP is converted to ATP, and FAD is converted to FADH2, and that energy is sent on to the electron transport chain. As you go around, one more time, NAD plus converts to NADH, also to be sent to the electron transport chain. And here is your 4-carbon chain that combines with acetyl-CoA as it continues the cycle. For each turn of the cycle, one ADP molecule is converted into ATP. ATP can directly power the cell's activity. ADP converts to ATP. So for every pyruvic acid that comes in, then it produces one ATP. The electron carriers NAD plus and FAD each accept pairs of high energy electrons to form NADH and FADH2. NADH and FADH2 are used in the electron transport chain to generate ATP. The electron transport chain is the third portion of cellular respiration. Remember, each molecule of glucose results in 2 molecules of pyruvic acid, which enters the Krebs cycle. So each molecule of glucose results in 2 complete turns of the Krebs cycle. So glucose turns this twice. Therefore, for each glucose molecule, 6 carbon dioxide molecules, 2 ATPs, 8 NADH, and 2 FADH2 molecules are produced. So 6 carbon dioxide, 8 NADH, 2 ATP, and 2 FADH2. So how does this electron transport chain use high energy electrons from glycolysis and the Krebs cycle? The electron transport chain uses the high energy electrons from glycolysis and Krebs cycle to convert ADP into ATP. NADH and FADH2 pass their high energy electrons to electron carrier proteins in the electron transport chain. So from the Krebs cycle and from glycolysis, we have NADH and we have FADH2, and they convert these from the inner mitochondrial membrane and through the so in the cytoplasm, they convert this through the inner membrane. At the end of the electron transport chain, the electrons combine with the H plus ions and oxygen to form water. So their products are water, and they combine with oxygen. Energy generated from the electron transport chain is used to move hydrogen ions against a concentration gradient across the inner mitochondrial membrane and into the intermembrane space. So the flow is from in the matrix out into the intermembrane space. Hydrogen ions pass back across the mitochondrial membrane through the ATP synthase, causing ATP synthase molecules to spin. With each rotation, the ATP synthase attaches a phosphate to ADP to produce ATP, the higher energy form. So with 4 electrons from this FADH2 and NADH, so with 4 electrons combining with 2 oxygen and 4 hydrogen ions, they combine to make 2 water molecules. How much energy does cellular respiration generate? In the presence of oxygen, the full process of glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain releases about 36 molecules of ATP per complete breakdown of a molecule of glucose. This represents about 36% of the total energy of glucose. The remaining 64% is released as heat. The cell can generate ATP from just about any source, even though we've modeled it using only glucose. Carbohydrates are broken down into simple sugars like glucose. Lipids and proteins can be broken down into molecules that enter the Krebs cycle or glycolysis at one of several places. The summary of cellular respiration: each of the stages: glycolysis, stage 1, Krebs cycle, stage 2, electron transport, stage 3. Of course, these are continuous. Where? Glycolysis happens in the cytoplasm, Krebs cycle in the mitochondrial matrix inside the mitochondria. Electron transport happens in the mitochondrial membrane. What is used in glycolysis? What is used is 1-glucose. In the Krebs cycle, oxygen and pyruvic acid. In the electron transport stage, oxygen is used. And then there are many items that are recycled, run through a series of reactions that end up producing 2 ATP for the glycolysis net. In Krebs cycle, 2 ATP, and then also 6 carbon dioxide. And then 32 for electron transport, 32 ATP. That's the product from electron transport, along with some water. Another summary to get another picture of the same cycles: the cycle of 1-glucose, which is 6 carbon, C6H12O6. It enters the cycle of glycolysis and on through cellular respiration, the whole 3 stages. Glycolysis in the cytoplasm uses 2 ATP, but then produces 4, so it's 2 net. And it produces 2 NADH. That's in glycolysis. Next, it sends off 2 pyruvic acids to the Krebs cycle, and that produces 2 NADH, 8 more NADH, and 2 FADH2. In that, it lets go of 2 carbon dioxide, 4 more carbon dioxide, and then 2 ATP in stage 2. Finally, the electron transport, also called the phosphorylation, it produces 32 ATP. So a net harvest of 36 ATP in cellular respiration.